Hello there. Today we're talking my first Star Wars figures. Yes, hello and welcome to the channel. So, a few months ago I made a video saying that was it, I was done. I didn't need to collect any more vintage Star Wars figures. When I say vintage, I mean vintage, you know, retro vintage, or not retro, but original trilogy. No, not original trilogy. You know, vintage figures. Kenner figure. Well, I didn't have Kenner figures. I had Palatoy. You know what I mean, right? So in that video, I said that I had a photo when I was a kid of all my figures lined up in front of an X-wing, and I wanted to recreate that picture. So here's that photo, and here's the recreation that I've made of it, which I think is pretty cool. Now, I was only able to do this because in that original video, I didn't have Princess Leia. And my good friend Jason over at Travels and More with Jason F, he donated one to me, or gifted me one. It's very fantastic to have her back in the collection. She's not 100% perfect. She's got a tiny little tear in her cape, but that doesn't matter because he also sent me this retro collection example. Please excuse the glaring ring. Anyway, so we don't need her. We don't need the retro collection when we have the vintage. Now, my idea for this video was just to talk about my first ever original Star Wars figures that I had when I was a kid. When that photo was taken, I think I was probably about 4 years old, and it was at Christmas time, and I just got that X-wing as a Christmas present. So I was very, very excited to finally have a vehicle. So the X-wing would have been my first ever Star Wars vehicle. And finally, I had vehicles to go in my figures, and they were my favorite toys at that time. Probably most of us of a certain age, they were our favorite toys at a certain time. So now let's go through them one by one, and I will tell you their stories and what these figures actually mean to me. Okay, now none of these are my original figures. All my original figures were sold in the Great Purge 2010. I'll leave a link to that video in the description if you wish to check it out and find out why I sold all my stuff. Now, I think my first ever figure that I got would have been a Farm Boy Luke, and here we have no Farm Boy Luke. Now, the reason is Farm Boy Luke wasn't in that original photo because I'm pretty sure I lost him in a supermarket whilst on a shopping trip with my mum. Now, I went in that shop with a Farm Boy Luke, and I came out of it without a Farm Boy Luke. But, you know, as kids, you put things somewhere and suddenly it's gone, you've forgotten about it, and then when you do remember about it, it's too late. Now, that would have been probably about 1981, something like that, when I was about 4. And I never got a Farm Boy Luke until I picked one up at a boot fair in the late 80s, early 90s. Poor old me, hey? Anyway, so I'm pretty sure Farm Boy Luke would have been my first ever Star Wars figure. So without him, we can move on to my second figure, which I'm guessing would have been Darth Vader, because to fight Farm Boy Luke, who's the good guy, you need to have a bad guy, which would be Darth Vader, obviously. Always loved the helmet sculpt. This is so unbelievable 70s. Anyway, this guy I picked up as a beta. It was about €1.50, something like that. I had to repaint all his dials on his chest. I had to wrap his legs in tape because he's gone all floppy. And his cape, as you may notice, is a bit short because this is the cape for the Retro Collection Moff Gideon from the Mandalorian. I said his name a bit weird, didn't I? Gideon. You know why I said his name weird? It's because I'm in the Netherlands and my youngest son has a friend called Gideon, and you pronounce it here Gideon. There you go, explanation. Anyway, he has a lightsaber, this figure, but unfortunately it's gone a little bit short. He's not so strong with the Force. I bought a whole set of weapons and things in a beta lot, I guess, for quite a decent price, and I think just for display purposes it works fine. So anyway, there you go. There's sort of like a repaired Darth Vader. Maybe one day I will get another one which I can put into my display, and then I'll put that one into the TIE Fighter that I've got for him. The next figure in the line would be Han Solo, one of my personal favorites when I was a kid. Now, my original one, he'd lost all his paint here, and he'd been frozen probably about 20 times in a block of ice in my mum's freezer. So there you go. But this is a nice example, also not too expensive. He wasn't complete, but he doesn't need to be. It's a good thing with this figure is you can display him like this, so he looks like he's going for his blaster. Or, now I do have a blaster here. This came with the lot of beaters that I have. So the front clip is, yeah, someone's cut it off for whatever reason, unfortunately. But okay, whatever. It's good for display, and it's original, and it was cheap. So he's just dropped it on the floor. Right. Okay, I found it. It was under the table. It's okay. It's a vintage gun, vintage gun, and it's back. So I'm going to leave him here, so if he drops it again, it will be there. So he can hold it like that, or he can hold it above his head like that, which I always thought was a pretty cool pose. Let me know in the comments what you think. I do also have the retro collection version of Han Solo. He's flying my Millennium Falcon at the moment because he refuses to hold his gun. His gun I may have given to another one of my Han Solos that I have in my display. So next up we have Luke Skywalker again. Well, I say again, we didn't really have him in the first place, did we? Because I lost my farm boy Luke in the supermarket. Mummy, I've lost my Luke Skywalker. Anyway, there's a replay of what happened all 43 years ago. So here we have Bespin Luke. Again, pick this guy up. It wasn't too expensive because, as you can see, his body is a slightly different color to his arms and legs. But that doesn't really bother me. I always used to, well, I guess when I was a little kid and I was playing with these figures, they would be Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and so. But then later on, when I got more figures and more vehicles, I used to play my own sort of bounty hunter games. So Bespin Luke was the assistant to Han Solo in his Endor with the trench coat Han Solo. And those two used to go off, have adventures in a snowspeeder as bounty hunters. That's the games I used to play. So anyway, there you go. That's that guy. Next up, we have Princess Leia herself, my first ever crush. Technically, I didn't really have a crush on this particular figure. I had a crush on Carrie Fisher, but hey ho. Look, she got boobs, and we used to make do with what we could get back then in the day. Right. Again, as I say, very grateful to Jason over at Travels and More with Jason F for this figure to get her back into the collection. She doesn't have a gun. That's okay. You end up paying very, very silly prices for these things. Recently saw one of these for 70 euros, also without the gun. And then if you're going to put the gun in her hand, you want the original, you're going close to 200 euros for one figure. Well, that's nice, isn't it? So I'm perfectly happy to have her like that. Next up, we have the original Stormtrooper. This one I bought complete. So that's an original blaster in his hand there. I'm not going to move it around too much because I don't want to be scrabbling around underneath the table again trying to find a gun. So he's yellowed a little bit, but that happens to these things. You can try and get a perfect collection, and there are people out there that do that, and that's fine. That's their thing. But for me, I'm not really bothered about perfect figures. Obviously, if he was completely yellow, then that's not really for me. I would probably try bleaching him or something. But slightly yellowing, it shows their age. They've all been played with. They're all a little bit scuffed. It's, you know, it's what they are. And now, really, another Luke Skywalker figure. And this guy was also a beta figure. As you can see, I've had to draw the red line back on his helmet there. And I had to give him some paint touch-ups. And he's missing his gun. But other than that, we know who he is. And the Rebel emblems, insignia on his helmet are still good. So I'm happy with that. It's a good enough figure. Maybe one day I'll find one in a better condition with a gun or something. And I'll put this one in my X-Wing or Snowspeeder, depending on what day it is. And lastly, we have the TIE Fighter pilot. This guy was also a beta, so I had to do some paint work on him. And he was really, really sticky. But hey ho, there you go. He's got his Imperial insignia on his helmet. I'm not sure if you can see that. Maybe if I try to focus in. There, you can see it just there. Also on his shoulder. It's not perfect. It's got a bit of wear. And again, maybe I will get another one someday that's a little bit better than this one. But I'm perfectly happy with this. I always wondered why the Imperial TIE Fighter pilots were so small. You put him next to a Rebel pilot, Luke. And Luke was small for a Stormtrooper. But the Stormtrooper is actually smaller than Luke. Or maybe it's because he's wearing a helmet. How about that? Oh, that Luke. Yeah, no, he's quite tall. So maybe the TIE Fighter pilot is Princess Leia dressed up. Anyway, whatever. That was nonsense. Right, so I'll just put these back here like this. Okay, and with that, we have come to the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed this video of me going through my old figures that I had back in the day, and why I have them now, and why they mean so much to me, because these would have been the first figures I ever had as a kid. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button. It's there for a reason. Subscribe, share, all that kind of groovy stuff. And I will see you on the next one.